Hi, welcome to part 3, the final part of this video called Honda Cam and Crank Sensor Backup. Basically, we're looking at how well the PCM can adjust should any of the signals, the high priority rotating position signals and speed signals, if any of them are missing, whether we're missing a crank, whether we're missing a cam, or we're missing both cams. In this situation, I'm going to start out all the tests. I'm going to do cranking. The fuel rail is totally devoid of any fuel. This thing will not start, but it will have all the signals that it would need it to start if it did have fuel in the rail. I did something a little different on this final video. I put the WPS 500 in cylinder 1. I traded it. I don't have, like you saw in the previous 2 videos, power to the crank sensor. I robbed Peter to pay Paul just for the diagnostic value, because I think the transducer, when we see the instant, we kind of see a template. We see something that's consistent where we can base timing signals on, because we'll kind of start out with known good, and then we'll make comparisons to a cranking signal with missing a cam. First we'll do it missing the crank signal, and then we'll do it with missing the exhaust cam, and then with missing both cams, because I don't think I did both cams in the initial 2 videos. I will not do cranking with the intake cam missing. So anyway, I will start out. What you see on the scope is just a still shot of what it's going to look like, so you get an idea in your head. I'll go down the channels just so we know where we are. Blue is the channel A is an in-cylinder transducer. B is red is a crank signal. C green is a intake cam position signal, as you can see there. Yellow or gold, sort of, that one on the top there, that is the exhaust cam signal. Purple is ignition 1 strike. That's the I'm sorry, that's burgundy. Purple is ignition trigger right there. That is ignition trigger 1 to coil 1 from the PCM. Channel F, gray, is an injector for 1. I attenuated that signal. That is right there. You can see the gray fuel injector signal right there. Channel FGG, orange, is the ignition current ramp. We're current ramping the coils right here. You can see them here. That's an ignition coil cranking. And then burgundy, the final channel, is we are current ramping the injectors. That's right here. You can see these. Burgundy are the fuel injectors current ramped. So nonetheless, I will start the scope, and we're going to start out by looking at a known good cranking with all the participants, the crank sensor and the 2 cam sensors working properly. And we're going to crank it. It's going to crank, and we're going to analyze the signal. So here we go. Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at known good so we can compare it to when we are missing a signal. Let's go back. Okay. All right. Okay, right here. So here we are. Let's kind of zoom in on here. We'll bring the in-cylinder down. This is a fire cycle. As we can see, we have this is known good. Our correlation is good between our red crank sensor and our gold cam sensor and our green green exhaust cam sensor. Let's take a look at. Okay, yeah, that's our gold sensor. Our gold sensor has the little encoded notch, and that's what differentiates it from the intake cam sensor as far as what it looks like. So anyway, here we are. We're back to a fire cycle. Ignition trigger is right where we would expect, right here, purple. TDC is about right here. We're a little on the downside of TDC, but then again, this is cranking. We got to think about this. This never is going to running, so we're probably a little on possibly the downside of TDC. That's when the PCM commands the spark to happen. But this is not a natural condition, because the vehicle is not kind of moving into a running condition. So basically, there's our trigger. There's our TDC, pretty much. We saw that in other videos. That's what we call I called this the trough in another video. I called it's titled "Where is TDC?" Anyway, that's that. So did we cover everybody? So this is kind of normal. Let's look at our angles where everything's happening. We have 720 degrees of rotation here. and we have the spark happening here. We have the injection happening. Let's look at this. Our fuel injection is right there. That looks pretty good. I don't think we're getting any, let's go back to see if we have any non-sequential pulses. Sometimes that happens. No, we don't see any. Basically, here's the cranking spot. We got one here. Okay, that's a non-sequential pulse, so the PCM's kind of learning everything. Even with good information from a good crank and two good cams sensors, it still has to. It starts out with a non-sequential, a batch fire. Then it starts going sequential the rest of the way. So kind of keep this in mind. Take a snapshot of this as you're watching this video, and then compare it to our first situation in the cranking. We're going to take the crank sensor away and see what it does without a crank signal. And so let me get rid of this. And then we'll kind of look at how it behaves in other way. Can you see that? Can you see that scope? Okay, we're going to crank now without a crank signal. There we go. Let's see. Let's analyze this one. We'll stop the scope and then roll it back. Let's kind of. Okay, here we go. Here's a fire cycle cranking. I like this one in the middle, 720 degrees. This is, oh, something happened. Yeah, we got a crank signal. I didn't do something right. Okay, let's see. Okay, my bad. I dropped the ball here. We'll roll it. Okay, just do it again. I'll start up. This is cranking without a crank signal. Here we go. Okay, so let's see what we got here. You shouldn't have seen a crank signal, or I've dropped the ball again. Here we go. Okay, and you don't see a crank signal, which is expected. Okay, we have no crank signal. We have, obviously we have our transducer. There's our fire cycle, 720 degrees. Our spark looks pretty much the same. Our injection sequence looks good. I don't see it doing anything. Where our number one fuel injector fires, I didn't if you want, roll it back to the other video. It's looked like it's firing. I'm going to say, let's determine what stroke our injection is firing on. We'll kind of go here. Okay, all right. We'll see where the injection is firing. Okay, here we go. Go to 4 partitions. Okay, and we see our fuel injector is firing. Okay, it's on the exhaust stroke. Here's our power stroke coming down, or our decompression stroke in this case. And right in this 180 degree window is the exhaust stroke. It is firing right here in the exhaust stroke. So that's probably, I didn't notice on the first known good, but you guys can roll it back and analyze and make a comparison. There's gray right sort of at the beginning of the exhaust stroke as the piston is starting to ascend to top dead center to blow the exhaust out through the open exhaust valve, which opened right here. Spark looks good right at TDC, a little before, but nonetheless, we might have had some speed there. This is our ignition current ramp in orange, looking good. Our cam and crank signals are there, and obviously the PCM is relying on them for all the information to make its decisions about when to create spark and fuel. So when I go back now, I will create another situation. We will have a good crank signal, but we will be without an exhaust cam signal. I will disconnect the exhaust cam sensor, and we'll see what it looks like when we crank. Here we go. Without an exhaust cam sensor, so let's roll it back and analyze. Okay, right here, look at a fire cycle. We do not have a our exhaust cam, so we don't see anything on the fourth channel, on the gold channel. Where is our injector firing? Injector is firing probably in the same spot on the exhaust stroke. How does it start with this? Let's see if we, okay, right here is where we start actually crank. Let's see if everything is, okay, we have a sequential here, a non-sequential, like a batch fired on the injectors. We don't see, we start to see spark right here. So it kind of looks like not that much has changed with this, missing this, this exhaust cam position sensor. So what we'll do now is that I'm gonna disconnect both exhaust cam sensors and take, both cam sensors, that is, intake and exhaust, and we'll see what happens. I just want to kind of get into if we can see anything odd happening in transition. We obviously have no exhaust cam signal. We have good spark and fuel right here. This is a fire cycle. Spark is good. Injection is good. It's in the same spot. I'm going to say the gray guy right here. That's at the beginning of the exhaust stroke. So right now I'm going to say let's see what it looks like with both cam sensors disconnected. Okay. There we go. All right. Let me stop this and start it. Okay. Both cam sensors disconnected, intake and exhaust. We have a good crank sensor, or at least we should. Okay, we can see it right here. We have a crank sensor. We don't have any cam sensors, intake or exhaust. And let's take a look at how it affects our pattern now. And we haven't determined, we're going to do this, all this test, I'm going to do it running. We do not appear to have an injector pulse, which is odd. Yeah, I'm sorry. See the gray? Okay, we're late on the injector pulse. You see now where we fire, let's kind of take a look at this as compared to the one with just one signal missing. Let's look at that. Okay. We just have a crank signal. We have no cam signals. Green and gold are missing. We do not get an injector pulse initially. Why do we have a current ramp and no injector pulse on gray? That doesn't look normal. That's our current ramp. But it's not a good injector pulse voltage-wise, but current-wise it is, which is sort of a phenomenon to me. Obviously, when do we start to get the actual gray signal? All right, the gray guy, still missing gray. Okay, you see it? No gray signal, but we have current flowing. Okay, that's a sequential current. Let's keep going down the line. Maybe we start to get the gray signal. Okay. Well, we'll just have to. Okay. Now we start to get a gray signal. Okay, there's our gray signal, and it is sort of not where it was before. It's not in the exhaust. It's not in the exhaust stroke like it was previously. It is more in the intake stroke. So obviously the PCM is making a different decision, being it's missing both the intake and exhaust cam sensors. Okay, my explanation is why we have current here is because I'm only, obviously on the gray signal, I'm only looking at one injector, but the current is looking at all the injectors. So it's firing the number one injector in a different spot. We can say that without any doubt right there as compared to known good as like it did before. So anyway, let's start over, and now we're going to get the car running. We're going to run all our tests with the car running and do the same scenario. We'll go from cranking to running and see what we look like. Okay, anyway. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna stop the scope and I'll do it. I got both cam sensors plugged back in, and let's just look what a normal start with all the speed, all the sensors working properly. We're missing on cylinder one because we have the transducer in the hole, but everything else is good. Let's take a look at that. Let's stop the scope and analyze. Back. Okay. All right, we're cranking here. We're going from cranking to running. Right here, we got a high tower, then we're coming down. We're sending because we're cranking. What does everything look like? We got our injection is back normal where it was initially. We have a good spark trigger on right here on 1. We have our injection and our ignition is becoming sequential. So let me see if it ever batch fires initially right off the bat. Okay, we see one here. We see one batch fire, which is double the amperage. It initially does that to get its faculties of where everything is. Crank sensor, intake cam, exhaust cam right here. So let's go down the line and just sort of look at when it starts running. Now it's running basically on normally, and everything's looking good. We got our current ramp for the ignition, our current ramp for the fuel, crank sensor, intake cam, exhaust cam, and ignition 1 trigger, which is before top dead center, as we can see as we kind of zoom in on here. We're a few degrees, I'm going to say 8 to 10 degrees before. Nonetheless, I will start a situation where basically I'm going to disconnect both cam sensors and see what happens and see what it looks like if it does start. Now I've yet to prove this, so here we go. Okay. No. Three times. The 3 attempts, finally the 3rd time was the charm. It got running, but let's kind of analyze that. We'll roll it back. Okay, here we go. The first time, unsuccessful at starting right here without a cam or a crank, without either cam sensors. Obviously, we're flatline green and flatline gold. We don't have our gray injection. That's a little late. It's way toward, let's look at that guy. Our gray injection is more toward the, oh boy, almost toward the end of the intake start of compression where the intake valve is closing. So that's out of norm. Our spark, look where our spark is. Spark for 1 and ignition, and the tower for 1 is way out of sync. So that's way late. We see our batch fired on the injection. Let's go down the line and see where it starts to learn. It's making a decision. Okay, that was unsuccessful. Here's the second attempt right here. Ignition late. Ignition, see, you can't run with a spark. That's 180 degrees out. That right then and there tells you you're not going to be successful at running. And the 3rd time, obviously, let's see the 3rd time right here. This is the 3rd time when it does run. And you can see, okay, see our spark got in sync. It took a while for it to learn to get the spark close to TDC for its cylinder, as opposed to being out here. And then everything is in normal. The conditions are met to run the engine, and then we're basically running right here. We're running, how's our injection? Our injection is still sequential. Our ignition has always been sequential, and there's our trigger. Nonetheless, this is running strictly on the crank sensor without either cam sensors. Anyway, signing off. I ran a little long here. All the best to you. But this is another video from a tactical technician video from Diagnation. Hope you enjoyed it. And good wrenching and good diagnosing. Thanks so much for watching.